So this is something that always comes up that I wanted to talk about, which is sectional charts, airspace, and your Checkride. So if you don't have one already, you need to get a sectional chart. Let's show it properly here. Sectional chart. There's one of these for every area in the United States. Mine is the Phoenix sectional. That's the closest major city and airport to where I live. And you need to know how to read a sectional, and you need to know what it's telling you. And it will get asked on your Checkride to make sure you understand it. You understand, and based on the sectional chart, your examiner will use it to ask a series of questions, and it'll be kind of a jumping off point for discussions about the sectional chart itself, airspace, communications, all kinds of things. So that's really super important. For your knowledge test, you need to understand the sectional. On the back, there's the kind of the cover of it, the front page of it, to show you which sectional it is. But on the back of every single sectional is this right here. This is the sectional chart legend. Super useful, okay? It's got all these definitions of symbols. They give you this during your knowledge test, but they don't point it out. They give it to you, but they don't point it out. So it's something you need to start using and understanding how it's used properly, okay? So let's talk about understanding your sectional chart and how you will get asked questions about it on your Checkride. So here's the United States of America. As far as the FAA concerned, this here is what the United States looks like. Okay, this is based on the VFR, Visual Flight Rules, what it looks like in terms of the airspace. Okay. Now this is SkyVector. It's a free website. I'll put a link down, but it's literally skyvector.com, and it gives you a view of all the sectional charts together. Now, this is great and useful and all, but we really want is, for this discussion, we don't want to see this button at the upper right that says World VFR. We don't want that. Okay, what we really want is to start zooming in, and I'm going to use my home club as the basis for the discussion. Okay, and this is how you get it. So now I click on, instead in the upper right, I click on Phoenix. Now it's transferred just to a map. Okay, I'm going to take the weather dots off of there. Okay. And what happens is you have the map. Okay, now it's just because what it was is all the maps stitched together. It's the entire country's worth of maps stitched together. But that's not useful for the discussion. That's not how you would do it, because you'll do it with an actual physical paper map. Okay, when you open it up, okay, it looks just like what's on the screen right here, right now. Okay. Again, I was talking about the legend. This is that legend in the upper right. There's that cover. Hey, look, it still says Phoenix sectional. Okay. Here's the legend. Here is what Arizona looks like according to the FAA in terms of what what we have here. Okay. And knowing all the different symbols on this map and how it's going to be used on your Checkride is super duper useful. Okay. So it's also going to help you on your knowledge test too. So this is a question you will get on your during your Checkride with your pilot examiner. They're going to ask you, they're going to say, starting on the ground, go up and tell me all the airspace that's there. Okay. My airport, my glider club is at El Tiro. Okay. This is the home of the Tucson Soaring Club. And you're going to be asked, okay, tell me about the airport here at El Tiro? Well, you can look right here where it says it's a private field, El Tiro. The elevation is 2,100 feet. And then the longest runway is 5,100 feet. They drop the last two zeros, or they round it, and they round it. Okay. And it's easy to get those two mixed up, particularly when the numbers are similar. But if you look at surrounding airports, the elevation will be similar, whereas the runway length will be very different. So even earlier on, I would always get confused with that, and so I'd have to look around to make sure I was saying the right one. And then what your examiner is going to ask you is going to say, starting on the runway, go up and tell me what each piece of airspace is. Okay. And you're going to say, well, right above the ground, as soon as we're 1 foot off the ground, we're going to be in Class G, Class Golf airspace. Okay. And then that's going to go up until 700 feet, when then I'll be in Class E, Class Echo airspace. And that will last all the way up to 18,000 feet, at which point I would be at Class A, Class Alpha airspace. And then the examiner's going to say, well, how do you know you're in Class Echo airspace at 700 feet? And you'll say, well, and then you'll see this, and you've done this already, so you'll know how to do this. You look at this vignetting. FAA calls this color magenta, so we'll call it magenta, just so that way we use common terms. Hey, look, there's all this magenta color. Well, let's go up back to our legend, okay? If you ever forget any of this stuff, remember it's in the legend. Holy cow. Hey, Phoenix sectional chart legend, and you zoom in. Air traffic, service, and airspace information. Hey, those vignetting, okay, of these colors, not the solid ones, but the vignetting ones, where it's changing color from a lighter to a dark. Class E airspace, Class Echo, with floor 700 feet above the surface, okay, that laterally abuts 1,200 feet or higher, Class E airspace, okay? So you're going to say let's go back to El Tiro. Well, this vignetting of the magenta says that I'm going to be that the Class Echo airspace starts at 700 feet. Okay. And the examiner says, oh, that's very good. Then they'll use that as a jumping off point to start discussing other things. Okay, well, if it starts there, what happens on the other side of that vignetting? To which you'll say, oh, well, that's also Class Echo airspace, but it starts at 1,200 feet. The two colors for Class Echo airspace, let's go back to the legend, are that blue vignetting and the magenta. And when you're first starting out, you always wonder which one is at 700 feet and which one is at 1,200 feet. And the way to remember it, the memory trick to remember it is Class Echo airspace. Okay, the one that's blue, the sky is blue, the sky is high and blue. So the one that's blue is 1,200 feet. The one that's not blue is 700 feet. You'll just constantly get that problem. It's like which one is the 700 feet one and which one's the 1,200 feet one? I can't remember for Class Echo airspace when it starts. Well, it starts at the blue one is the higher one, 1,200 feet. Everyone always remembers 700 feet and 1,200 feet, but everyone always forget which color is which. Blue is the sky, blue is higher. Okay? And when you forget, you go to the legend. They ask you this on your knowledge test. Okay? They will ask you this on your knowledge test. So, in which case, you just come to the legend here and literally look it up. Yes, I have it memorized now because I've used it so many times. But who cares about memorizing it on the knowledge test when you can literally look it up and it takes seconds and you know you'll get the answer right every single time. Whenever they give you an airspace question on your knowledge test, always look it up every single time. Okay, coming back. So your examiner will say, okay, well, outside this magenta vignetting, what's the airspace like here? Well, it's class G from the surface all the way up to 1,200 feet. 1,200 feet, then all the way up to 18,000 feet. That's where class alpha airspace will start. And they'll say, oh, that's good. That's great. Okay. And then what your examiner will do is they'll pick out some airspace nearby to ask you about the requirements of that airspace. Okay. The closest one to El Tiro here, you've got both Ryan Airfield down to the south, and you've got Tucson International here. So the examiner will ask you a question. Well, okay, you've been soaring a little bit to the south. What's this blue dash line over here? Okay, tell me about that airspace. Well, blue dash line, you know it's class Delta airspace because you've been studying this. But if you ever forget, okay, if you ever don't look up every single thing on your Checkride. You can look up a couple things, and you can always say, oh, I can always look it up on the legend. Don't look up everything. You need to know some of this stuff. But hey, look, blue dash line is class Delta airspace. Blue dash line, the magenta dash line is class Echo airspace that goes down to the surface. Okay. Okay. Oh, well, over here at Tucson at Ryan Airfield. Okay. Well, this is class Delta airspace, and the examiner will ask, okay, well, tell me a little bit about it. Oh, well, they've got a control tower. It's blue, so it's a control tower, and that airspace goes up to, but not including, 4,200 feet. That's what that little minus sign means. It means up to, but not including. So it goes, and your examiner say, well, is that 4,200 feet? They might ask you a question. Is that 4,200 feet MSL or AGL? Is that above sea level or is it above ground level? Well, airspace, the only thing we have in our glider to tell us about the altitude, we don't have a above ground level meter. We have an altimeter, which is calibrated for mean sea level and tells us that's, and obviously the FAA wants you to make this easy on you. So guess what? That's the altitude that you'd read on your altimeter, 4,200 feet. Oh, it goes up to 4,200 feet, but not including 4,199.99999 feet forever. Okay. And you'll also see this. Hey, look. Okay. They'll say, well, what about these dash magenta lines? Oh, that's class Echo airspace. Class Echo airspace that starts now at the surface. Okay. Normally out here, outside the magenta vignetting, class Echo airspace starts at 1,200 feet. Inside the magenta, inside the magenta vignetting, the class Echo airspace starts at 700 feet. This is class Echo airspace all the way to the ground. Oh, the examiner asked you, well, why is that? Well, this is class Echo airspace that is lined up with these little runways here. So that way, as airplanes are taking off, landing and taking off, they're inside of controlled airspace the entire time. Oh, that's interesting. So the examiner will then ask you a question similar to this and say, okay, well, tell me a little bit about Ryan Airfield. You're going to look, and you can look right here. They're not asking you for stuff outside of this. They're literally asking you for stuff that's literally on the chart in front of you. They're asking you to know if you can interpret the chart and use it. Ryan Airfield, CT, control tower. The frequency on it is 125.8. You put that in there. There's a little star, okay? Okay, and there's a C for CTAF, for the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. If you look it up in the chart supplement, this the tower is only open, that star tells us that they don't operate 24/7. They are only there during the day. I think they go 6 a.m. to like 8 p.m. And then when the tower is closed, this same frequency is then used by anyone else who's flying there as the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency. ATIS, okay, that's your weather, okay, 133.35. Okay, now just like up on El Tiro, like we were talking about, we had an elevation and a longest runway length. Same information, same format. Always same information, same format. Once you learn the format for something, you've learned it forever. It's great. Okay, elevation of this airport, 2,419 feet. L, the runway is lit. Okay, pilot controlled runway lights. You can key your mic. And the longest runway here is 5,500 feet. Okay. And then it also tells us something about the traffic patterns. Right patterns on runway 6 right, runway 15, and runway 24 right. Okay. And when the FAA puts a airport symbol on the chart, they don't just put, there's not just a random airport symbol that they put. They make it look like the actual airport from the air. So this airport, Ryan Field, has 3 runways, okay? 2 parallel runways that kind of go east, northeast to kind of west, southwest. And then another one that's going almost north-south, okay? So there's 3 runways there, and this is what it'll look like from the air. That's what it looks like from the ground too, okay? And then your examiner will ask you a question, something like, okay, you've been thermaling out between El Tiro, your home base, and you've been coming down here towards Ryan Airfield. And it's now kind of late in the day, and there's maybe some storms over El Tiro. And are you going to turn back to El Tiro? Of course not. I'm not going to fly into a storm. But Ryan Field is totally free and totally clear. How would you go about talking to Ryan Airfield and getting permission to land there? Well, first I would get their weather information. I'd dial it up 133.35. I'd listen to the weather information. Tell me about winds, visibility, any other hazards. Then I would talk to the control tower, 125.8. Okay, and I would identify myself. I'd say who I am, where I am, and what I want. Remember, whenever you're talking to air traffic control, it's just those 3 things: who you are, where you are, what you want. This is glider 12345. Maybe 10 miles north of Ryan. Inbound, need to land. Okay. And the tower would get back with you, and they would give you instructions and say, and you could even tell them, I can't land at my normal home base of El Tiro, and I need to land somewhere soon. And they'll clear you right in, and they'll let you land. Okay. It's a little more complicated than that, but not much. Okay. The examiner will ask you, then let's come over here to this airspace here. Okay, now we've got the class, now we've got the Tucson International. So we've got an international airport, and we've also got a military airport, Davis-Monthan Air Force Base right there. And the examiner will ask you, okay, well, you've been flying around here near Mount Lemmon. You know, you've got all the way over to Mount Lemmon. Tell me about this airspace here. Okay, now we have this solid magenta. Okay, we've got it in 2 places. Let's go back to our legend. Check that out. Remember, it's an international airport. There's airline flights coming in and out of there all the time. So it's not the busiest of airports, but it's still pretty busy with some pretty big airplanes. Solid magenta, not dashed, solid magenta, Class Charlie airspace, Class C airspace. Okay. You'll know your airspace by studying this chart again and again before your check ride. And you'll also know these charts, how to read them, because you'll be studying for your knowledge test. Hey, look, solid magenta line. So this is Class Charlie airspace. And there's something, and remember, with larger airspaces like Class Charlie and Class Bravo, these are large commercial airport airspaces. They're always shaped like an upside down wedding cake. They're layers, okay? So that wedding cake with its steps is flipped upside down. And so that's so that way airplanes can come in, land, because you're not flying straight. You come in, land at an angle, and then take off it again. And that upside down wedding cake structure allows them to take off and land. Okay, so in this inner portion, the Class Charlie airspace, and look, here's the thing about airspaces. When there is a limit on that airspace, it's the same color as the ring around it. Okay, so at Ryan Field, okay, the top of that airspace is that blue color, which is the same as the dash blue. Over here at Tucson International, we've got two different airspace altitudes, and they're the same color as the magenta around it. In the inner portion here, the Class Charlie airspace goes all the way SFC, surface, up to 6,600 feet. Okay, all the way down. So that way airplanes can come in and land here on the main runway, land and take off here. Same with Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. Out here on this outer ring, okay, well, no one's landing here in the city of Tucson or way down here south of it. Sahuarita is the little town down there. Okay, so it goes up to the same 6,600 feet, but it only goes down to 4,200 feet. And that's why this Class Charlie airspace, they own down to 4,200 feet. That's why it doesn't go down over at Ryan. It goes up to 4,200 feet, up to but not including, because who owns the exact altitude of 4,200 feet? Tucson owns that altitude, okay? So you can't have two airspaces in the same place. You know, they have to be, one can be on top of the other, but they can't be like overlapping. That doesn't work. Somebody in air traffic control, two people in air traffic control cannot own the same airspace. That would be dangerous. Okay. And your examiner is going to ask you about that airspace, and they're going to ask you about requirements. They're going to say, well, what do we need to go into that airspace? Let's say we're flying over Mount Lemmon and we see a bunch of microbursts and thunderstorms, you know, over by El Tiro back at home base. Can we land as a glider? Can we land at Tucson International? Absolutely, you can land at Tucson International. Not a problem. Well, what do you need to land at Tucson or even fly through Tucson International? Well, we need to be talking to air traffic control. And the question would be, how do you do that? So out here, we have, depending on where we are, we have these little boxes, okay? CTC Tucson APP within. Contact Tucson approach within 20 nautical miles on 119.4, that's the civilian frequency, or 318.1, that's the military frequency. Okay? And that's different depending on where you're coming from. They have more than one air traffic controller, and they're working different sectors. So in this northeast sector, 119.4. If we look at the other sector to the northwest, it's 125.1. Okay. We want to get the weather first. We look at Tucson International. We get the weather there, 123.8. Okay, we get that weather. Then we contact Tucson Approach. Tucson Approach, this is glider 12345 with information, Alpha, Beta, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, whatever the weather information. They've always got a weather code on them. I'm over Mount Lemmon, and my glider club, I can't land back in my glider club due to weather. I need to land at Tucson International. And they'll say, using their official terminology, they'll say, come right in. They want you to be safe. Everyone wants everyone to be safe in aviation. And so absolutely, you can come in and land at Tucson International if you need to. And the examiner asks you, okay, well, do you need any special equipment to go to Tucson International? Well, yes, you do. Obviously, you need a radio to be able to talk to them. Not all gliders have radios, but you need to be able to talk to them. Next, if we're flying in Class Charlie airspace, we need to have both a transponder and ADS-B out, which is some radio equipment that tells air traffic control and other airplanes where we are. Okay. So there's that. Okay. More likely, the examiner would come over here and ask you, well, okay, if I'm flying around here, okay, what are some of the hazards that I've got going on here? Well, what are all these symbols? And they'll say, what are all these symbols? What do they mean? And you start pointing out some things. Well, G, this little G here, G is for glider, okay? And how do you know G is for glider? Well, we go back up to the legend again, okay? Hey, look, there's all these little aviation symbols, okay? A is for aerobatics, G is for glider, H is for hang gliders, U is for ultralight, UA is for unmanned aircraft activity, okay? And it'll just be inside this little diamond, okay? And it'll tell you what kind of aircraft is there. Unmanned aircraft, that's drones. Okay, hey, look, parachute jumping area, okay? All these little things. So, coming back over to El Tiro, well, it says that there are glider operations in this area here, okay? It's warning other traffic that's flying through that there are going to be gliders in the area. Over here, there's a little A. There's going to be aerobatic activity. And these symbols are not put on there accidentally. They're put on where the activity actually happens. It's not just kind of close. It's like literally like where it happens. There's an aerobatic box where they do competition aerobatics. It's literally right here. It's off the end of this runway off to the right. And it's literally marked on the ground so you can see it from the air. Parachute jumping activities, okay? And you've got these little boxes. Caution, intensive parachute activity, see supplement. And you got the parachute activity. Caution, military parachute operations over in this area. Now, at Marana Regional, the symbol is up here to the northwest, and over here at Pinal Air Park, the parachute symbol is kind of to the west and almost the southwest. That's actually showing where the drop zone is. So when people are landing, when skydivers are landing at Marana Regional, they're landing, there's kind of two drop zones, one here and one kind of over here. And so they're saying, hey, look, this is the place to avoid parachute activity. Whereas Pinal, the drop zone is kind of on this southwest side of the airport. And so that's where you should expect and where you should avoid flying over so that way you don't run into skydivers as they're coming down. Okay, that's interesting. That's great. How does that, how does that affect things? Well, let's take a look at this. Marana Regional, we've got our weather frequency, 118.375, got our field elevation, 2,032 feet, star with an L, okay, it's lit, the runway is lit, but it's the star means it's not always lit, it's pilot controlled lighting, 6,900 feet, okay, that's a long runway, okay, this runway looks pretty long, that's the longest runway, 6,900 feet, and we've got the Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, 123.0, with a C for Common Traffic Advisory Frequency, CTAF. And then we've got right pattern on runways 3 and 30. And remember, that those are the direction of the runway, and the FA just drops the last zero. So that runway 3 is lined up with 30, add an extra 0, and runway 30 is in a direction of 300. Okay, so here's runway 3. It's going in the direction of almost north. Okay. The heading is 30. Okay, and then runway 30 is lined up to the northwest over here. Heading 300, add an extra 0. And when you look at it, you say, oh, well, why is right pattern? Well, why does it have to tell you about right pattern? The right pattern, right traffic patterns. Well, unless otherwise specified, all traffic patterns at airports are always to the left. Okay, but they're specifying right patterns here. Well, let's take a look at what that does. Okay, normally you'd come in, here's runway 12 here, you'd come in and make left turns, that's left traffic patterns or left turns. You make left turns and you would land on runway 12. Well, then why don't you do the same thing on runway 30 going the other direction? Well, if you made a left traffic pattern to runway 30, it would put you right over this drop zone that's right here. So instead, they have you come in on the opposite side and do right traffic patterns and make a right turn and make another right turn and then land on runway 30. Oh, it keeps us away from that drop zone there. Okay. Right pattern also on runway 3. Okay. Runway, let's look at the opposite one first to see how it is. So normally we do a normal left traffic pattern into runway 21 and land there. That's fine, no problem there. But if we made left turns and did a left traffic pattern to runway 30, we would again go right over the drop zone. Not a good idea. So they have us do right patterns, come down on a right downwind, turn right on base, and then right on turn right to final for runway 3. So again, we're avoiding the drop zones where the parachute guys are coming. So either traffic is either on this side for runway 1230, it's on the far side of the airport, or it's on the southeast side of the airport for runway 321. Okay, and they're keeping people away from this side of the airport so that way it doesn't conflict with the parachute jumping activity. Same as up here at Pinal, where they also have that. They only have the one runway, 12 and 30, but they want, when you're doing landing on runway 30, they want you to do a right pattern here, so you come down on the kind of the northeast side of the airport, okay, and you do a right turn, right turn to land there, so you avoid that drop zone. Okay. The examiner is going to ask you questions about weather and visibility based on this. Okay, and they're going to start the discussion with, okay, well, you've told me about the airspace. You've told me about some of the equipment you need to fly in that airspace and the different kinds and where it starts. Tell me about what weather requirements are there to fly in each of these types of airspace. Well, the easy way to remember that is with the little mnemonic, the little memory aid of a Cessna 152 and a F-111 fighter jet. So as airspace gets more busy, you need larger visibility requirements to make sure you're not running into somebody, so you have enough time. In Class G airspace, it's going to be close to the ground here. It's not next to any major airports. You can remember, Class G is considered uncontrolled airspace. So at that Class G airspace, one Cessna 152. Well, I need a visibility of 1 statute mile, and then with every cloud, I need to be at least 152. I need to be 1 mile horizontally. Wait, no. Yeah. 152. So 1 statute mile of visibility, and then 500 feet below a cloud, 1,000 feet above the cloud, and 2,000 feet to the sides of a cloud with a visibility of at least 1 mile. As we get into the Class Echo airspace, it's going to be more congested. So now the rule becomes 3 152s. And these Cessna 152s, those are small little airplanes, propeller airplanes. They're not going that fast. You actually there are some of those that actually are tow planes around. They'll put them big honking engines in them and they'll make them tow planes. 3 152s, well, now you need 3 statute miles of visibility, okay? And then around a cloud, 500 feet below, 1,000 feet above, 2,000 feet to the sides, okay? And what it is we're trying to make it so that way when airplanes are flying around, we have enough time for either party to see the other one and to make a move to avoid them. Okay, well, it's a really great day. You're getting honking thermals. Everything is really working really well. You're getting up to 12, 13, 12, 10, 12, 13,000 feet. Everything is great. What visibility do you need there? Well, the change is above 10,000 feet. There's no speed limit on aircraft, okay? So jets can be flying literally hundreds of miles an hour, okay? Below 10,000 feet, they're limited to 250 knots, okay? Above 10,000 feet, they aren't limited at all. So they could be covering they could literally going 400 or 500 miles an hour. And that does not give anybody a lot of time to get out of someone's way. So the FAA says that we need larger visibility requirements to be able to see each other at a further distance, so that way we won't run into each other. So now it becomes 5 F-111s. And F-111 is a very fast fighter jet, supersonic fighter jet, that the Air Force used to fly. So now I need to have 5 statute miles of visibility. I need to be 1,000 feet below a cloud, 1,000 feet above a cloud, and 1 mile. 111. 1 mile to the side of it. Okay? Because remember, you can't fly into those clouds because we're not flying on instruments. We're just flying visually in gliders. But somebody else may fly out of that cloud. And we need time to see them and they need time to see us. And so that's why as the airspace gets busier, we need more visibility. And also as we get higher, there's no more speed limit. So again, we need more visibility because people are going fast. And when you're going fast, the time that it takes, to potentially cause an accident just gets really short because you. I'll tell you that the scariest thing, whenever you're flying a small aircraft or a glider or something like that, is to see a fighter jet that just passed you by, because that means that you didn't see him when he was coming in, and you see him flying off in the distance. Thankfully, at our club, our aircraft all has transponders. Those fighter jets are listening to air traffic control, and they have. And now there's more ways to easily see traffic on your electronic devices when you're in the aircraft. But when you see a jet that just zoomed right past you, and it's not so close, but it's like, oh man, I didn't see that guy at all. Okay. The examiner is going to ask you about some common issues. Okay, they're going to say, oh well, and rarely would a glider be flying into Tucson International. There are some people actually that keep their motor gliders there. I've seen them. But you're not going to be soaring in this area. You're not going to try to be getting thermals inside the Class Charlie. That's not the place for it. You're going to do that on the outside of it. And I'll tell you, flying past, like here's Push Ridge. I've done some cross countries, and when you're flying past Push Ridge with the ridge on one side and the Class Charlie on the airspace there as you're flying back to El Tiro, it is awesome. It is so much fun to be flying past this with Push Ridge on your right outside your cockpit there on the side. I just love doing that. And when I fly either airplanes or gliders, I love flying past this because it's so cool looking. And you're flying on your way home. But the examiner is going to ask you about other types of airspace, and they say, well, what's going on? You're thermaling, okay? Yeah, you're thermaling out here. What is this little magenta comb thing looking like? What's that? What kind of airspace is that? This little magenta comb. What is that? Well, you'll already know this answer, but we can always come back to our legend. Okay. Hey, look, that little comb, magenta comb. Alert area and military operations area. MOA, military operations. We say that MOA. And then the blue comb is prohibited or restricted. So let's come back. Let's take a look at it. Oh, well, that's the cells 1 MOA and the cells low MOA. What's a MOA? is what the examiner will say. Oh, well, that's a military operations area where military training can go on. Okay, that's great. Can you fly into it? Yes, you can. We can fly into a MOA. We're just visual flight rules. They're supposed to be flying on visual flight rules too. And we can absolutely thermal in this area. And the examiner will ask you, when is that MOA always active? Are there always fighter jets flying in there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Well, no, of course not. Well, how do you know when it's active and not? Well, let's come up, and this is on the paper chart. This is why it's so important to have this paper chart. Okay, can't always get to it. In addition to the legend, we also have this special use airspace area on here. Special use airspace. Blue for the blue ones, magenta for the magenta ones. Okay, and it'll tell us what the number is, the altitude, the time of use, the controlling agencies, and the frequency for how to get a hold of them. Okay, we had 2 here. We had cells low MOA and cells 1 MOA. Well, let's find out what that means. Cells 1 and cells low. And why are they called cells low and cells 1? Because they're right over the town of cells. Cells right here. I thermaled over there. Not a great place. I got stuck there one day. Was able to make it back, but it was hard. Cells. So these are called cells because this is the town of cells. Okay, these are usually named for something. So let's go to cells low and cells 1. Okay, these are listed in alphabetical order. MOA name, and then, okay, A, G for Gladden, J for Jackal. Over here, cells 1 and cells low. Cells low, so we'll start with the low one first. 3,000 feet AGL, but not up AGL 2, but not including 10,000 feet. It's in operation, scheduled operation from 6 o'clock in the morning to 1900 hours. That's 7 o'clock at night, Monday through Friday. Military generally works 9 to 5 or something close to 9 to 5. They operate Monday to Friday. They don't want to be flying in these areas at night, and generally they're not operating there on the weekend, and also federal holidays. If we want to find out if it's in operation right now, we can always talk to Albuquerque Center on 125.4. Let's look at cells 1, which is on top of it. Okay, it says 10,000 feet. It only says 10,000 feet. Is it only 10,000 feet? Same operation time, which makes sense. Albuquerque Center, 125.4. Okay, there's this little asterisk down here. Altitudes indicate the floor of the MOA. All MOAs extend to, but do not include flight level 180. So that's 18,000 feet. 18,000 feet and above, we talk about flight levels. Unless otherwise indicated in tabulation or on a chart. Okay, and if we go back here, we have the altitude had that little star, and the time of use has the little cross symbol. We come back, it's right there, but I wanted to show it. Other times by DOD NOTAM, okay? Department of Defense NOTAM. Other times when these things are active is by NOTAM. If there's some need for them to be active on the weekend, they can be. Okay, so we know that it's we know what the altitudes for those MOAs are. We know when they're active normally. We know who to contact. But remember, we can fly through them anytime we want as VFR, as flying visually. Okay, totally allowed. Okay, coming back here to the general Tucson area. Oh, we've got these other blue areas. We've got some of these blue areas down here. Okay, got a blue area there. Got a blue area here. Okay, what's going on with these blue areas? Okay, we already looked up there, and we found out that those were restricted areas or prohibited areas. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, people are hang gliding down here. Okay, H for hang glider. Okay, what's this? Restricted 2303B, Bravo. What is that? Tell me about that one. Well, that's a restricted area. Can you fly in restricted areas? No. Not when it's active. Well, when is it active? Was it 2303? Was it? Let me just make sure. Yeah, 2303B. 2303 Bravo. And there's a group of them. There's A, B, C. Restricted 2303B from 8,000 feet up to flight level 300. So that's up to 30,000 feet. From 8,000 feet up to 30,000 feet. 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., 1700 hours, Monday through Friday, 24 hours in advance, Albuquerque Center. Okay. So if we contact Albuquerque Center, we can find out if it is in use. And if we're flying outside that, outside this window, oftentimes it's not in use. Okay. So again, on the weekend, a lot of these military areas are used for training and things like that. So outside of Monday through Friday, kind of normal business hours, most of the military people are at home or they're off doing whatever they do for the weekend. So those areas are not going to be active. Can you fly through a restricted area if it's not active? Absolutely you can, okay? But we want to talk to and find out if those things are going to be that. Oh, I'm flying close to the Mexican border here. What do we have down here? What's this circle here? One restricted area 2312. Caution, unmarked balloon on cable. 14,009 up to 14,999 feet MSL. They have these balloons along the border that have cameras and other sensors on them to see if anyone's trying to cross the border or anything like that. Well, can you fly through that one? Not if there's a balloon there, because it's on a giant steel cable and it's not going to move, and there's nobody on that balloon, and if you ran into that with your glider, you're going to have a bad day no matter what. Okay? Okay. So now we've looked at MOAs, we've looked at restricted areas, we've looked at the airspace from your glider field all the way up to 18,000 feet. We've looked at some class Delta, some class Charlie airspace. You will get asked about temporary flight restrictions. On this map here, we've got these red and orange colors here, okay? Okay. TFR, temporary flight restriction. You will be asked about those, okay? You'll be asked a question like, oh, the president's coming to town, or there's a football game on Saturday. Does that cause any concerns? Well, yeah, it does actually. Let's go up here to the Phoenix area. Okay, on these charts, usually a TFR, a temporary flight restriction that's in the future, that's been announced, that one will be in orange. Okay, this one, when we zoom in on it, it says TFR. It's got the number for it, and it's, hey, look, it's over a stadium. Okay, we've got a public gathering effective from April 15th to April 16th. From the surface to 400 feet AGL, you've got a UAS public gathering, so some kind of drone activity, and it will be live in 11 days. So they're saying that that's going to happen. Hey, look, we've got another TFR. It's located at another stadium, okay? UAS public gathering, surface to 800 feet, valid for 2 days, okay? If there's a big football game, college football games, baseball games, whatnot, those will almost always have flight restrictions over them. Or if the president is coming to town, okay, you're gonna have a temporary flight restriction. Can you fly through a temporary flight restriction? No, you may not. You can't, okay? Unless you're talking to air traffic control, but they're not going to let you just, thermal directly over a stadium during a football game or a baseball game. So, but we need to be aware of those. Where can you find information about temporary flight restrictions? Where can you find that? Well, you can call 1-800-WEATHER-BRIEF. They'll give you information about, talk to a weather briefer, an FAA weather briefer. They'll give you information on any temporary flight restrictions, current ones, or during your expected time of flight. The FAA also has a great TFR website that you can also look at. They'll tell you about that. Okay. So just by looking at the sectional chart here, okay, we could talk about airspace. We could talk about airports. Your examiner can ask you questions. Oh, there's a storm. Where else can I land? What kind of procedures would I do? Oh, I need to land at Marana Regional. Okay. Which runway should I land on? Well, I can call up the weather. I can find which way the wind is blowing. And then I can land, and then I can talk on the common traffic advisory frequency. I can talk to the traffic in the area And I know what directions, just by looking at the sectional, I know what directions the patterns are to that airport. So the examiner will use the sectional to start a number of different discussions. They'll talk about airspace. They'll talk about the symbols on there. They'll talk about special use airspace, MOAs, restricted airspace, TFRs, how to know when those MOAs and those restricted airspaces are active. Again, you want to have at least one paper copy of your sectional available for that. They'll use that discussion on airspace to talk about weather and visibility requirements, what to do in terms of a case of an emergency, or at least a change of plans when maybe you can't get back to base. How do you talk to the air traffic control? Can you land there? Okay. And as a glider, you are an FAA certified aircraft just as much as any airliner is. So you absolutely have the right to land, and your tax dollars are paying for those air traffic controllers and for that airport to be maintained. So never feel bad about using the resources that the FAA provides for us, so that way we'll have a safe operation. You are paying for it, and it has been set up so that way you can use those resources. Never feel bad about using those resources. Let's see. So talk about emergencies. Talk about airports and understanding, traffic patterns, understanding the elevations, runway lengths, and things like that. So just by pulling out the sectional chart, your examiner is going to use it for discussion of like 5 to 10 things, all of which he has to ask you about. As a competent pilot, you need to know, not be an expert in each one of these, but you do need to have a basic level of knowledge in each of these areas. And by asking you some of these questions, they're going to find out not just when the FAA gives you your knowledge test, they're asking you kind of some abstract questions. They're going to ask you about places all over the country. They're going to show you all kinds of sectional charts. Your examiner wants to know, are you going to be safe flying at your home airport? You're going to do most of your flying at your home airport. So they're going to ask you more questions about your area. So before you get into your check ride, you want to have studied this. Sit down with an an instructor, either one of your local instructors, or reach out to me, and we can go over these exact same things for your area. My area, I know what to look at a lot of areas, flown a lot of different areas, but your area is not going to look exactly the same as my area. There's going to be different hazards, different issues going on. Okay. And as part of your check ride prep, you should be able to discuss everything in the airspace that's fairly close to your home base, and how that affects safety, both what are the hazards, but also what are the resources. Okay, we've got radio frequencies to talk to people. That's a resource. Okay, there's more traffic there. That's a hazard, but we have a way to talk to them, and that's a resource to mitigate that hazard, so that when we're talking to them. Okay. Are there any specific questions that anybody has of what you're seeing? If anybody has any specific questions, I am happy to answer those questions. Or if you want to look at a different part of the country, you can also do that too. Don't feel bashful. Ask questions if you have them. Oh gosh, it's got on an infinite loop now. Okay, let's go back to full screen mode there. Okay, are there any questions, any other topics on sectional charts, airspace, or your Checkride that your examiner might ask? Are there any questions on those out there? Because I want everyone for that to be covered, so that way everyone feels prepared and ready. If you're a ways, how far is that? Where is everybody in there in terms of their flying? Are they just interested in gliders? Just interested in aviation in general? Are you thinking about learning to fly? Are you getting ready for a Checkride? Are you just seeing these pictures of this weird map and saying, "Oh my gosh, that looks cool," or "That looks weird"? Okay. One more thing, just let's talk about class Bravo airspace real fast, just so that way we've completely done, we've talked about them all. So here is Phoenix Sky Harbor. And again, we've got these blue solid lines, okay? And if we go to our legend, again, the blue solid lines, class Bravo airspace, class B airspace, okay? Coming back over, okay? So this is one of those upside down wedding cakes, and this one looks particularly weird, okay? So here are these 1, 2, 3 runways that are going east-west at Sky Harbor. The class Bravo airspace has all these different sectors. It's very complex because it's a big, Phoenix is a big city of like 5 million people, so it's very large. Lots of little airports around it. The class Bravo airspace right here goes from the surface, SFC, all the way to 9,000 feet. Okay? And as the further we get away, the higher that ceiling, the ceiling is going to stay the same height, but the floor is going to move up as we get further away from it. So if we go to the right, okay, if we're getting ready to land, it's 27. It starts at 2,700 feet and goes up to 9,000 feet. Go out a little ways into this sector here, 4,000 feet all the way up to 9,000 feet. Okay, out here, 5,000 feet all the way up to 9,000 feet. Okay. If we're coming down to the southeast, 6,000 feet down to up to 9,000 feet. And it's sometimes hard to find exactly where the little sectors are and where the numbers are, but look inside of it. Eventually you'll find it. FAA wants you to be able to find it. 7,000 feet to 9,000 feet out here to the southeast, and all the way out 8,000 feet down to up to 9,000 feet. So again, that floor is moving down, so that way as an airplane approaches and is descending for landing or is taking off and climbing, the airspace is they're always inside that class Bravo airspace, but the FAA doesn't want to take up any more airspace than they need to for this very busy area. Okay, so you want to be able to look at that, and then look, there's this big magenta line that goes all the way around it. It's not class Charlie airspace. That's your mode C and ADS-B out veil. So inside here, okay, this is where aircraft have to have mode C transponders and ADS-B out. As gliders, we don't have to have that. We don't have to have a transponder and ADS-B out in these areas if the glider doesn't have an electrical system. And most gliders do not have an engine-driven electrical system. They'll have a battery, but that's not considered a permanent engine-driven electrical system. So you've got Estrella Sailport, where Arizona Soaring is, okay? They don't have to have transponders and ADS-B out. Other aircraft do, but we don't. And knowing that gliders are exempt from that is going to be one of the things your examiner wants you to understand, is that we're exempt from that rule. If I fly inside the class Bravo, do I have to have it? Oh, yes, I do. Oh, yes, I do. Because now I'm flying in a very busy airspace. But outside of that class Bravo airspace, even inside the veil, Mode C and ADS-B out veil, I don't have to have it. But the moment I cross this blue line and I'm between 6,000 and 9,000 feet here, I absolutely have to have a Mode C transponder and ADS-B out. Okay, same thing with the class Charlie. When I'm flying outside of that, okay, don't have to have transponder and modes and ADS-B out. But if I cross into it here between 4,200 feet and 6,600 feet, absolutely I have to have my transponder and my ADS-B out. If it's an emergency and you have to land no matter what, they're going to let you in. Don't worry about that. But if you're just normally flying through, you have to have it in those areas. Okay. Okay. And I've given kind of all the questions that the examiner would ask about this area. Once the examiner sees that you understand these different topics, they'll move on. This has been a rather long discussion of this because I want to show you all the different kinds of questions you would get. Once an examiner says, oh, you clearly understand what's going on, they'll move on to the next topic because they have a number of topics they have to cover, okay, for your check ride. And the FAA on your written test, you know, the number of different questions that you can get about sectional charts is rather large, but you're not going to get every single one on the test. Okay, the FAA needs to know, do you have a good enough understanding of sectional charts, the symbols, how to use that information. Okay. Okay. We've been doing this for about just over an hour now. If there are any further questions on sectional charts, airspace, visibility, and how the examiner would ask about that, go ahead and get those now. Because we've covered all the different airspace types, okay? Class Golf, okay? Uncontrolled airspace, Class Echo airspace, Class Delta, and then the more busy airspaces, Charlie and Bravo, and then Class Alpha airspace, 18,000 feet and above. Okay. One other thing is the examiner will then can ask, okay, well, you're flying here. Okay, you're flying in Class Echo airspace. You're flying all the way up to 13,000 feet. Is there anything special about flying at 13,000 feet? Okay. Well, I'm in Class Echo airspace. The visibility requirements are 5 statute miles. I need to be 1,000 feet below a cloud, 5,000 feet above a cloud, 1 statute mile to the side, 5 F-111s. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Any other things? Well, if I'm at 13,000 feet, if I've been over it above 12,500 feet for 30 minutes or more, I need to be using oxygen. Oh, okay. And if you climbed even higher, what would have to happen? Well, if I'm above, as soon as I climb over 14,000 feet, I need to be on oxygen the whole time. Well, what if it's a 2-place glider and there's 2 of you in there? Well, above 15,000 feet, I have to make oxygen available to my passenger. It's not required that they use it, but it does have to be made available to them. And the examiner would say, that's correct. You're absolutely right. And then I've gotten the question from the examiner, what if the passenger refuse to use the oxygen? Would you keep climbing up to 16, 17,000 feet and beyond? No, I would not keep climbing up if the passenger refused to use oxygen. That could be bad for their health. They could pass out, get hypoxia and pass out, things like that. So again, by talking about the sectional chart, there's the symbols on it. We could talk about airspace. We could talk about visibility. We could talk about traffic. We could talk about airports. We could talk about aeromedical factors and the equipment you need for those aeromedical factors. Talk about hypoxia, hyperventilation, even. And so the discussion, your examiner is going to use the sectional chart as the basis for a lot of discussion on how for all these things, because they have these required topics that they have to cover. Okay, during your check ride. And as you're prepping for your knowledge test, you also need to know the same information, because you're going to be asked a lot of questions about sectionals and all this different airspace and visibility and right-of-way questions and traffic avoidance and stuff like that. So, okay. If there are no additional questions or comments, then we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks for participating, everyone. If you want to do these again, give me a topic and we will go over it, and we can talk through it and get some live questions, and we can answer those as we go. Subscribe to the channel. As always, this content is for everyone out there that is interested in gliders or wants to become a glider pilot, and we'll go ahead and want you to be successful in your glider flying. Thanks, everyone.